Okay, so here we are live with Fearless Immunity class. So, your third week, we're going to be talking some more about immunity, but we're also going to be touching base on the cancer portion of what immunity has to do with cancer. And then talk a little bit about what that is. And really, the answer to cancer is to figure out how to prevent it, not wait until you get it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what the truth is behind some of the statistics and what you can, understand about it. The questionnaire, of course, is going to help grade you or rate you on where you're at. And then at the bottom of that, you'll notice when you get to your score that then you'll work backwards to go and see where can I change some things that really showed me, right? Because it's kind of like one of those things, like if you don't know how bad something is, you can't make any changes to fix it, right? And so it's really getting, sometimes it might be a little bit hard to see your answers, but then it gives you a realization of, okay, it's really good to be doing this. Then after class tonight, I did make my power bar, which it's been a long time since I made one, and oh my gosh, it's so good. I forgot how good it was. I actually stopped making it because I got a little addicted to it. They're like candy. So yummy. Anyways, we have that for you later. And then I also made for everybody a sample food chart, like what to eat for the week. And we'll go through that and talk about that, and we'll hand that out at the end too. So I just want to make sure you knew you had that coming. So, of course, just to kind of reiterate, our purpose here today is to make sure that everybody has an understanding and an opportunity of what real healthcare means. And when we talk about our purpose, is really my purpose. Literally, is I've always said since I graduated from chiropractic school 34 years ago, that my realization, my purpose of becoming a chiropractor and then wanting to help change the world, right, was like the first thing that was when I was 16 years old. I realized I wanted to be a chiropractor because I wanted to change the world. And the big thing that I also carry around still to this day about that is that I feel that each individual person deserves the right to know the truth about where health and healing comes from. And my heart breaks every day that I see somebody who didn't know something different or didn't have that opportunity and ends up not only down this wrong model, but on that path that then brings them into, assured damage. And one of my most passionate stories I tell people about is a young girl. One of my things is I'd like to someday have my grandchildren, which I don't have any of those yet. But if and when I have grandchildren, I'd like the world to change so much about healthcare that my grandchild says to me, "Grammy, why did people used to think that health came from a bottle of poisonous chemicals? Or why did people think that taking a newborn baby, perfectly created from God, needed poison injected into their arm? And why did they think that?" And it's so much so like that seems normal to us, but it is so not normal that it'd be like someday in the future we look back at that like we look today at leeches. Right? When anybody signed up for like, oh, you don't feel good, here, put this leech on you, right? Nobody, or let's empty your whole body with blood and put all new blood in it. Like you would be just like, that sounds crazy. I'm not doing that. And yet that really is the truth about like vaccinations and toxins that we're putting so many toxins in bodies now that we're actually creating more and more cancer in the process. The World Health Organization, not that we love them anymore after this last year, but they have projected to talk about cancer, and the Cancer Association themselves and the cancer journals talk about cancer incidences of cancer, people diagnosed with cancer, are going to get increased by 75% by the year 2030. Right, so we got to do something different, right? We can't just keep going on this path and shaking our head and going, "Wow, that's a shame," right? And so that's why I get out of bed every day, and why I'm here talking to you guys. And I hope not only to encourage you, but that you encourage somebody else too, because I know that every time I share that with a passion, that somebody else is going to hear that story. And I talk about hearing that story because there's just like one more person that you might speak the truth to that they're going to change your mind about how they're going to travel on a path. And, one of the things that we always talk to people about, while I'm, a chiropractor and I don't hand out vaccinations and I don't really have a connection to whether somebody chooses to have a vaccine or not, but I feel responsible to at least let them know what their options are and that they can choose to say no and do something different. And so ever since it wasn't the H1N1, it was the one that they use for the 12-year-old teenage girls. I can't remember the name. The HPV. There you go. Thank you. Then the HPV vaccine came out, was like one of the absolute worst that, I also had children at that age that would have been, and they never went to a doctor where anybody even thought about offering that to them, but their friends were doing that stuff, right? And so I remember my daughter coming home and telling me that she told her girlfriend to tell her mom not to use that vaccine because it's one of the worst on the market, causes brain damage, does lots of neurological damage, crossing the blood-brain barrier. And I tell that story because what broke my heart was a young mom bringing in her 13-year-old daughter into my office that she had already had brain cancer after her vaccine. They removed the tumor, did all this radiation to her, and gave her you're fine, you got a bill of health, look at you, you're like perfect, no more cancer. And a year later, new tumors, 2 of them, one in her thoracic spine, one in her lumbar spine, that hit her spinal cord so bad that she couldn't even stand up and walk anymore. And I remember the day that they brought her in here, and we worked with her and adjusted her for a period of time. It probably was about 8 or 9 months, and they did a lot of detoxing. They even went to Mexico to try to get the radiation removed out of her body through getting rid of toxins, but she didn't make it. She passed away, and I believe it was I think it would be 5 years ago already. Blows my mind away. I can't believe it that long. Some of you are nodding because you know who I'm talking about, right? You've seen her in the office. They literally, the mom had to carry her into the office to get her adjusted. The family did a lot of supporting for her. But what breaks my heart about that is nobody ever told that mom. She did what she thought was the right thing to do because that's what her doctor told her, that was going to protect her, right? That vaccine is actually made to not get cancer. You're taking it for the purpose of, oh no, what if I get cervical cancer? Well, forget the fact that, that vaccine causes so much neurological damage that you end up with brain cancer on top of it. So, I just want to really be aware, and I know it's kind of a heavy place to start, but I really want to share with you how important it is that you understand and grasp this information, and that you also understand for yourself that you have the power to choose something different, right? And we're sometimes even thinking of ourselves, and I'll talk about this on another slide too, as kind of victims of bad genes, but that's not the truth either. So we really want to empower you to not only take change for yourself, but so much so that we take a responsibility for changing the people around us, our families, and then consequently our communities. And then we see change happen across the world. Like we literally watch that happen in the country. Just recapping a little bit from last week, talking about viruses and things like that. I don't know if anybody necessarily has any questions about that, and we're not going to spend a lot of time recapping, but just we learned a lot about how important it was to understand that your body does have the power to create antigens to viruses, and it's not a new thing for your body to know how to do that. And we talked about how the 5 essentials are really involved with that. And today we're going to be focusing on, what is it that cancer is and how does that play a role? So everybody's heard before, when you think about somebody who's had cancer, what that problem actually is caused from is not like cancer didn't just jump in that person's body, but it's actually a condition of a weakened immune system, right? Everybody knows that and heard that before. And where that actually comes from is the first thing to understand is that cancer is a mutation of cells, that your cells normally have a life cycle. At the end of that life cycle, there's an immune system response in your body that finds that cell getting old and dying off. And as it is, then it gets resorbed back into the body and eliminated. A new cell gets made in its place. And that happens every day, so much so that every day, every year, you guys, even, as we grow older, even as we grow older, still make new cells in our body. Our body is made up of 70 trillion cells, right? And so our cells are what give us energy. They're what help us move food through our body and turn it into energy, and that cell uses the energy. And cells have to live on some source of energy. And a normal cell lives on oxygen. Well, cancer cell lives on sugar, right? So if we are providing too much sugar in our body and our body doesn't metabolize properly and doesn't change sugar and use it in the way it should be using it, then it ends up being too much sugar in the body. And then if a burn off level happens, where literally sugar burns in the cell like coal fire, with lots of soot and damaging things that come out of that burn, where oxygen burns clean in your body. So when you build energy off of oxygen, it's actually cleaning out and cleansing your body, whereas we use sugar for energy, we're actually adding dirt. If you think of it as dirt, not literally dirt, but it's adding toxins and chemicals and things that are actually oxidizing cells and causing more damage in the process. So by definition, cancer cells are cells that change in an unhealthy environment to be able to survive. It's actually a survival mode that your body goes through. And because it's trying to survive, the cells don't die and then by definition become a cancer cell, because they don't just go through the life cycle and die off on their own. Right? If they did, then your body would just kill that cancer. As a matter of fact, that does actually happen in a person's body on a daily basis. Your healthy immune system and your healthy body kills between 1,000 and 10,000 cancer cells every single day. Right? So pat yourself on the back, because your body knows how to do that. You don't even have to think about how to do it, right? You don't even have to sit there and plan it, schedule it. It just, your body does it automatically. So it's pretty incredible that your body already knows how to handle that. So it's not really something to be afraid of. The other thing to understand is, when we went quite a bit into the physiology of the cell itself, but is to understand that there is really nothing to fear around cancer, because it is really a condition that your body can handle and heal. And reminding yourself that if you change the environment, it's something your body can heal from pretty much anything you handle it or give to it, provided that we're doing it preventatively, even more so. Right? When we did some cancer statistics, we saw that in the United States, they did some statistics, found out that we were the 7th highest incidence of cancer in other communities around the globe. What they also saw was that in the Mediterranean countries had lower incidences, and what the difference was between those two things is that these other countries that had lower incidence of cancer ate more vegetarian and fruits in their diet. Right, and in a standard American diet, and if you maybe look even a little bit at your survey and find out, we're now just kind of in this 3rd week of this class realizing you shouldn't eat so much boxed food or food that's been processed and recreated and powdered and brought back to life with a microwave and a bottle of water. Right? I mean, it's really, food is supposed to be live, living, life-giving stuff. And so that's one of the things that we know and we're learning about. And they showed over and over again that people consume diets rich in healthy plant-based foods have even not only healthier, less incidence of cancer, but healthier bodies. And part of that pathway too also becomes, it's a metabolizing problem. So what you feed your body to metabolize, if it can't handle it and can't metabolize it properly, then you start having a metabolic condition. And that metabolic condition turns into heart disease, diabetes, and then cancer, right? Because diabetes is like the prelude, if you will, of my body can't handle sugar anymore, right? And if in diabetes mode, your body's not handling sugar right anymore, you're not metabolizing, you keep feeding it into that then will force the body into mutating, into causing cancer cells. So it's kind of interesting, you look at the science behind it. And talking about really not being fearful about cancer is literally knowing that you have the power within you to actually make changes, because there's something called epigenetics. So you're not just a victim of bad genes. Anybody heard the word epigenetics before? Besides that, you guys have epigenetics, yeah. So epigenetics means that they saw in research over and over again that they could take a cell, a DNA of a person, put it in a certain environment, and actually change that DNA. So what it actually has to do with is you may have a genetic disposition for cancer, but you also have a genetic disposition for turning off cancer. You have one for turning on diabetes, and you have one for turning off diabetes. You have one for turning on heart disease and one for turning off heart disease. So what they found over and over again wasn't just you have bad genes, it's what you're stimulating or triggering in those genes by your lifestyle choices. Right? So that's powerful stuff right there, because what does that mean? That means you can do something different. You can choose a different path. So unfortunately, we're taught or told with poor, wrong information that we're just a victim of our bad genes. So much so that I get patients coming in my office that are taking medications for a condition they don't even have yet because their father or mother had that problem, so they start them on it right away. That happens most often with heart disease stuff. I see people on high blood pressure medication and cholesterol lowering drugs, and they don't even have those problems, right? And they automatically just say, well, you got it in your blood, so it's probably going to happen, so we're going to take these now just in case, right? And that's the complete opposite of doing a healthy thing for your body, because it's, medicating something that's not even there, and which is even worse. So really feel empowered by the fact that you have a choice and to make, and the choices that you make will change the path that your genes go on. Does that make sense? Cool. Stuck line. So we do that through the 5 essentials, and really talking about the philosophy of cancer is really wrapped around that your body doesn't need any help fighting cancer. It needs just no interference fighting cancer, right? Your body already knows how to do that. And so we're going to talk about those things in the 5 essentials. I'm glad you didn't fall. When I heard it, I was like, oh. So mindsets, the first thing we're going to talk about, it's not the first 5 essentials, but one of them. And really, your mindset, easy enough. It seems a little bit difficult, like when you're thinking about it, then you feel like you're trapped in your situation and how you're thinking in your situation. But your stress is not the problem. It's your response to the stress. They did research and found out that there's people who can have a ton of stress, and because of the way they respond to it, their body's not then affected by it. And other people have some amount of stress, but way less than somebody else, respond to it differently and have higher damage to their body or a worse result of it with even less stress, right? And you guys all know that that's true, because you've had times in your life when you have more stressful things, and sometimes the more stressful things kind of pressure you a little bit to be a little more productive, right? And a little more functional. And now we may be experiencing a little bit of different stress with COVID going on right now, because the stress of, I don't have a million things to do. Now I've got to figure out how to do all these things in this little box over here, right? And so it's a different kind of stress. But you even still, in any stressful situation, can choose how you think and process about that. Even when you think back, and I'm not going to be great at using direct names for this, but thinking back to our ancestors and people in the Bible that have been stuck in jail for decades of time, right? And we think, wow, how could anybody ever survive being wrongly in prison for a long period of time, or wrongly judged about something, or stuck in a situation that they can't get out of, and it's really how you respond and how you rely on your faith and what you put between your ears, right? Because the more you tell yourself that it's going to be bad, you're going to be right. They also did research and found out that with cancer patients, that they took cancer patients and told, separated them in 2 different rooms and told this group of cancer patients that they weren't going to make it, and this other group of cancer patients that they were, and then gave them positive, uplifting things to watch on TV and to laugh about and to see hope for a future. And told these guys, we give you 6 months, you're not going to make it very long, and right, whatever you focused on, that's what they saw. And the results over and over again is that people that thought the right way had higher incidence of recovering or reversing their cancer. Nutrition is a huge portion of this, and we'll talk a little bit tonight about that, and what are some of the things that we know that are things that have some damage to them that are then causing cancer. So one of the most important things is our fat consumption and where we're getting our fat sources. So when you were fixing that problem, we want to remove damaged fats and replace it with healthy fats. And it's a really important transition. And I see a lot of times my patients making some healthy choices in fats, but not eliminating the damaged fats, right? And so that's a really important process. You can't just take your omega-3 fatty acids and still eat Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? So you got to change the you got to get rid of the damaged fat, not just add. It's still good to add of the healthy fat in, but if all you're doing is adding healthy fat and you're not taking out the damaging fat, you still have something you're putting in your body every day that will cause cancer. Right? So we have to remove those things. What are damaged fats? Anybody want to volunteer? If they know how we tell what a damaged fat is? Vegetable oil. Yep. What else?
Canola oil.
What is a canola anyway?
It's a mixture of oil.
It is. It was actually rancid. It was actually rancid oil. And that, I'm sorry, not rancid, rapeseed. Rapeseed oil. That is the Canadian Annalita something. It's the initials make canola. And they told everybody that this is like better for you because it's got all this low cholesterol, yada, 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 lies, all based on lies. Because the truth of the matter is, anytime you take a fat and they change it by they heat it up and it removes a certain number of hydrogens off of it so that there's this different balance of chemical, whatever the chemistry is. And then that ends up not going rancid on your shelf. So you guys noticed before that maybe you have like some raw nuts in your cupboard that you forgot to eat after a while, and you go and pull them out and you smell them and go, oh, God, these things smell terrible. That's a rancid oil, right? It can happen to your nuts, it can happen to your olive oil, it can happen. And if it happens to those things, you should also throw them out. Like, don't use oil that smells bad because that's also a damaged fat. You can also damage perfectly good fat by heating that up too much too. So you can take olive oil, put it in a pan, and you get the fire going too high, you can see smoke coming out of it, you now damage that fat. Right? So you want to be careful not to damage your good fats that you're using. So the rules are high heat fat is coconut oil. So when you're heating something up at high temperatures, when I make chicken tenders with almond meal, with all the Italian seasonings and stuff on the outside of it, with egg, and make it breading out of almond meal, and then fry it in a lot of coconut oil in a 450-degree oven, and then you get fried, crispy chicken tenders out of that. That's now made with coconut oil, and it's actually good for you. As a matter of fact, go out of your way to actually pour a little extra of that oil on your vegetables and on top of that chicken tender when you're pulling it out of the oven, because that oil is a good oil and it's healthy for you. But if you're frying all that in Crisco, that's bad oil, right? So oil got a bad rap, and everybody's acting like they want to have less oil, and then what we end up doing is not having enough healthy oil, and that's causing a whole other problem. Which moved a lot of people in my parents' generation, and hopefully it doesn't happen to myself, my generation, because I watched my parents do it wrong, was do the low fat thing, right? Because that's the other thing that a lot of people do is they're afraid of bad fats, so then they do no fats, right? And so you try to do low fat things, and people say to me, I got the George Foreman, whatever, fryer thingy, acting like that I'm supposed to be like, yay, but I'm like, no, boo, that's actually a bad thing because now you're not getting fat that you need, right? So we want to try to actually add fats in your diet and not have low fat things. So another place to watch for healthy fats, and they have a couple of samples over here with your fish and your avocado and stuff like that. When you use, I lost my train for a second. It wasn't just nuts we were going to talk about. Oh, whole milk fats is not doing low fat foods. So any food that says it's low fat is going to either be a damaged fat or it's going to be higher in sugar. So like a low fat yogurt, even if it's a plain yogurt, when they take the and organic yogurt out of a cow, make yogurt out of that milk, and then take the fat out of it, it now becomes sweeter. And because it's sweeter, it's got higher sugar in it than what you want to be consuming. So you should be using full fat milk products if you're doing dairy. And so that's another place to put some healthy fats back in. So low fat's not a good idea either. You want to add in your healthy fats. Questions about any of that?
Does coconut oil ever go bad? It seems like I've had coconut oil forever.
It definitely can.
It
yeah.
can. I've never had it go bad before.
I don't think I've ever kept it long enough.
I guess
Yeah,
not.
so
I have had olive oil. Olive oil is more
Olive
sensitive.
oil.
Olive oil is way more sensitive. And I try to keep my olive oil in a dark container,
Right.
so I'll use pieces of it and then keep it so I'm not like opening and closing, that kind of stuff. But that will go faster. But I've not had, and I buy those big old
Same
tubs.
here.
I've not had one go bad, but I go through them pretty
peanut oil, is that a bad, that's pretty bad too?
Yeah, because peanuts are bad, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
a nut oil is not necessarily a problem. So we use avocado oil and grapeseed oil. I thought I was going to go for the nut one. Almond oil would be okay.
Oh,
But peanut itself is actually hydrogenated. So it's peanut and peanut butter is that
but you can eat peanuts.
I would not.
Not eat peanuts, okay.
No, almonds. Peanut. So you use almonds.
Cashew.
Almonds, cashews are okay, and you should try to do your nuts raw when you can. And then if you want to go even one step further of getting the right nutrients out of your any of your raw nuts, you want to soak them overnight and dehydrate them. Well, that's the best thing to do for them. Pecans too, those are good. Yep. I also use macadamia nuts. You can do roasted, but you don't want to try not to do like a lot of roasted nuts. You want to try to have more. You shouldn't have a bag right at a time. Yeah, we try, and you'll see on the food journal that I give you guys, or the food chart, that it should be like a handful. You know? And not Superman's handful, but
Your almonds are
Right.
Yeah.
how about commercial meats versus pasture raised? So we want to have our meats. This is another place where a lot of toxins hide because GMO foods are being then fed to the animal, and that animal is getting all those GMO toxins, and then that's concentrated toxin in their meat that then you're eating that meat. So you want to have farm raised, free range. We actually do a Presswick order here at the office that's like a co-op for a farm on the west side of the state that has grass-fed and grass-finished. That actually means something if you haven't heard that term before. It means that the cow is always fed grass and they're never fed any grains. And first of all, cows are not meant to eat grains. Like God made them to eat grass, not grain. So when you feed a cow grain, they get overweight like standard American diet makes us overweight and then unhealthy, and then their fat and their meat becomes damaged and unhealthy because they're unhealthy, right? So you want cows that eat. So there are sometimes you see labels and stuff that say it's grass fed, but they can feed it grass like once a month and feed it grain the rest of the time and still call it grass fed. So they can cheat a little bit on those wordings, so you have to be careful with. Yeah. So when we got our co-op and found our farms, we went out of our way to call farms across the state to find out who processed organically and grass fed and grass finished their meat.
That's called grass finish.
Yep, grass fed and grass finished. Yep. Yep, there's a order form on the table over by the wobble chairs in the other room. It happens once a month, but they have 2 months out of the year that they skip. And I think it's March and July or August. I can't remember. Maybe it's February and August. But it's 2 months a year. Is it February and August? February and August they skip. And then they're in that we order there from them all the time. It's actually pretty cool because you see lots of other families from all around, and they have like 4 different stops. I drive all the way up to Novi to pick it up, and then I bring it here to the parking lot here, and then the families that do our co-op here just meet us on that Saturday morning. Everybody picks up their meat. When I go out to Novi to pick it up initially, you can't believe the number of people there. And I'm getting there like a half hour before the truck's there, so I get to the beginning of the line. And if I don't, line all the way down to blocks
Wow.
of people coming from all over the place getting their healthy organic meats. Let's see. I think I have a different slide for talk about fish. Okay, so then this week's challenge, we're going to be passing out to you guys the meal plan. Actually, can I do that right now? I just pass it around. I'm gonna pass them back. So there are access to some in the books if you have the old book that they have more of a meal plan. I actually created this a little bit from the old book as well as from some of the new recipes. And I'm trying to start really basic with you guys so I don't overwhelm you with, go create this big, huge fancy meal, but some easy things to be able to do. And then we're gonna do one every week for the next 4 weeks. And then we're gonna do these next 3 weeks together like this. And you will have, unfortunately, I didn't create a shopping list for you, so you will have to kind of look ahead and create your own shopping list. And I'll try to remember if I try to do that for next week. When we get to the 4th week, so on our recipe night on the 18th, that'll be our last night meeting, and I'll hand out at that point one for a carb cycling week. Because they suggest after you do, and this is kind of a new thing for me too, but some of us have been there before, where you do advanced plan for such a long period of time that you kind of plateau. And they suggest you do a week, depending on your body type, a week, maybe 2, of carb cycling. So you get to actually put in some brown rice or some quinoa on some different meals, and then go back to advanced plan again. So you kind of have to remind your body, hey, I'm still, tricking it back into picking that up again. So we are going to work on that, and that's going to come at the end for that. And then we're minimizing toxins is another topic about how you're looking at how you're avoiding cancer and how preventing cancer from happening in your body by minimizing the amount of toxins you have in your body. So toxins is a big issue right now because we have so many in our environment that we now have to actually go out of our way to pay attention to how do I avoid those things. Where it used to be that we didn't have to do that, right? You might have had, and I remember years ago myself, and now even more so, a few friends that had a couple of allergies. Now it's everywhere. It's a very common phenomenon for people to have allergies. And I don't mean allergies like sneezing, stuffy nose. I mean reactions to all kinds of different chemicals. And when we first started hearing about kids needing EpiPens, it was just over the peanut allergy. Now it's over, 70 million different things that happen. But I don't have a lot of time to tell you this story, but I one time worked with my son's class when he was only in 2nd or 3rd grade, and they volunteered me to go on a field trip with them. And somebody figured out that I was a doctor, so they threw me in the medical, whatever thing. And my job was to carry this backpack full of drugs across the street. I wanted to run and put it in the dumpster somewhere. I didn't. I behaved myself. But I had to carry this bag because all the kids were going to this field trip and we were walking and it was down the road a little ways, and I got in charge of carrying the drugs. But the sad part was, how bad is that you gotta take? Here's how many kids are gonna carry along this bag full of drugs. So we're getting so much more toxins in our environment, and then everybody's just gonna answer to that is just more other toxins, right? Because medications are toxic too. So eliminating toxins in your life also means learning how to either figure out that your body can survive without some of these things, or get your body well enough that it doesn't need these things. So minimizing your toxins in food itself, paying attention to GMO foods. So when you buy healthy foods at the grocery store, you want to avoid GMO products. You'll notice, even if you do have to buy some kind of product that's a packaged thing, you want your ingredient list to be very minimal, and you want the ingredients in it to be non-GMO stuff. Everybody know what that means, or anybody need me to tell you what that is? Okay, cool. And so, not know? Okay, cool. So, it means it's genetically modified. And when what that means is they actually took the seed of a plant and genetically DNA crossed it in with a pesticide that would not only make the plant not likable to a bug, but it actually kills bugs. And we actually showed a really cool video one time, and I don't know if you guys remember this. I used to show a video of a silkworm eating GMO corn, and what it actually does is blows up. The silkworm blows up to die. And then they show all this, look at this great corn that we made because we got all this pesticide in here. None of the bugs are eating it. So what does that mean? They have more crops to sell people. But if the bug can't eat it without having a little teeny tiny worm blow up, what's that doing inside your body? Every single time you eat it, you're getting a little bit of inflammation, a little bit of inflammation, a little bit of inflammation until pretty soon, 40 years later, you're boom. Your gut's a mess. You got tons of inflammation, and your gut is where all your immunity is. So tons of autoimmune conditions are arising out of people from their gut. Even things like MS are originating in damaged guts. So in order to strengthen our immune system, we have to quit eating GMO foods.
And Canada doesn't allow GMO.
I don't know if that's
Correct? Is that still the case?
I know Europe doesn't. I don't know about Canada. Canada's a little too close to the United States.
None of that.
But
They
in
don't.
in Europe they
Not
don't.
even corn syrup.
And I do know that.
No corn syrup.
Don't have to touch.
Yeah.
Really?
Not in Japan.
Yeah, they actually I believe that. And I know for
Yeah, I
fact
know.
I know you have been there.
They have.
I know for a fact also in Europe that like McDonald's is forced to formulate their French fry recipe differently than they're forced to do or they're allowed to do here because there's a toxin in it here that the other countries won't allow. But in the United States, they don't care, right? So no fast food, no boxed food, no GMO food. And there's foods that are GMO that are higher risks than others. The best way to look that stuff up is something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So write it down. You can actually Google that. Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And when you Google that, you'll get a list of things, and they're rated. The things that are absolutely the worst thing to eat, unless it's organic. And then there's other things that it's not so bad to eat it, even if it's not organic, right? And I always tell people sometimes you can tell those kinds of things depending on the differential between the cost. You look at an organic onion and a non-organic onion, and they're not really that different price tag. But you look at an organic raspberry and a non-organic raspberry, and they're like $1.50 difference. That's the one that's more important in. That's why it costs so much more money. And the one that's not as damaged in doesn't cost, the differential is not as bad. So if you can't find your Clean 15 at the grocery store, look at both of them and figure out how far apart is it and decide.
There's an organic farm here in Macomb County, up at 30 Mile and Gratiot. You can buy a farm share and pick up like weekly, bi-weekly or monthly.
Really?
Yeah, RC Organic.
That's cool. I'd like to get the name of that.
Yeah, RC Organic.
Can you guys write down RC Organics?
Yeah.
The letter R and the letter C.
And it's
Organic.
30 miles.
30 in Gratiot. Yeah.
Gratiot. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they sell like meat and eggs and stuff as well.
Nice. And we'll check that out. And certainly closer. Because our guys all the way out there.
30.
So being mindful of just totally eliminating foods that are gonna have, because that's the GMO stuff is not that you can't wash that off, right? And when you get all that, they even change like the amount of fruit that's produced on a stalk or on a tree, and then also the size. You ever notice like they got all these big apples, and then they got all these little lunch-sized apples. Those are GMO to look that special like that too. When you go to the organic orchard, which there's organic apple orchard up in Flushing, Michigan, which is where we went just for our apple orchard experience for the season. It's out just west of Flushing, west of Flint, sorry, in Flushing. And you go there and you get your apples, and they're all like kind of funny looking and a little weird shaped and
They don't spray them.
I don't spray them and they're not GMO seeds, so they're not all pretty and perfect and they're not all polished and they're just got nothing on the outside of them and they're very,
Do
very
they-
yummy and
do
they taste
taste
fabulous.
I know.
Very yummy. That's very true. And then watch out for fish. You should be, when you're buying fish, you should be getting wild caught fish and not the bigger fish. A lot of people ask me, why not tuna? Even if you're talking about a, wild caught tuna, tuna is a bigger fish, so they're going to have a higher exposure to having mercury in their body because they're eating a lot of all the other little fish that have all the mercury in their body. So smaller fish is better, and then wild caught. There's your rules on fish. Yes, no farm raised fish. Yep. Farm raised fish is living in a toxic swimming pool. Uh-oh.
They feed the fish.
Great.
Yeah,
Great,
they
they
do.
do.
But then they're just
Can you go get my cord for me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so our next topic is oxygen and exercise. And they've done studies to show us, I'm supposed to tell you this on this last screen, but they've done studies to show us that your body actually, you don't exercise just for burning fat and looking good, but you exercise to actually raise your immunity and fight cancer. And they've shown incidents that a higher number of people doing regular exercise actually fight for women breast cancer and for men prostate cancer. And so you want to do your workout. Like when you get out of bed and you think, I don't really want to do my workout, you do it anyway because it's going to help you make sure your immune system is healthy. I also remind myself that I'm responsible for making sure that I stay well enough to take care of the people I got to take care of. And you owe that also to your family, right, that you want to be there for. And it's also something that fixes and changes your mood. And actually, they've done studies on exercise and nutrition that shown that people in depression actually get well and healthier without medication and more so with exercise. So they did 3 different groups. So one group was just exercise, one was drugs and exercise, and one was just drugs for antidepressants for depressed groups. And the 2 groups that had the drug in it did worse than the one that had no drug in it and just exercise. Right? So they've done these studies and shown that exercise is really important for lots of health purposes. People also go out of their way to try to spend money for injection of growth hormones. You guys heard that growth hormones like really good for you, keep you healthy. Well, guess who made growth hormone first? God. Because it's actually something that your body naturally makes every time you work out, right? And then you don't have to spend extra money on getting that growth hormone injection. Come on, little thing. So Max T3, we've already mentioned you guys and talked about. Did I give you the download about that, right?
Well, you
To make sure you got that.
You can go right on, I think, like $19 to purchase.
Yes.
The digital.
You can go digital download at maxt3.com. And the result of the 12-minute workout. So I want to make sure you guys hear a little bit of this science about this. Is that we used to think in science about exercise that the longer you exercise, the more fat you're going to burn. And what they found out was that the longer exercises only made you go into fat burning cycle while you were doing that longer exercise. And then your recovery time from that was really short because you didn't have any peak, like high output stuff. And when you do metabolic stuff, only 12 minutes, you're working as hard as you can and doing these in these intervals like that. And when you're done with the 12 minutes, the recovery time is longer because you actually push yourself past that fat burning level that you actually burn fat for 36 hours after a 12-minute workout. Right? And so it's worth it, and anybody can do that, right? Like 12 minutes. You have time for it, you don't have a reason you can't, and you don't need any fancy equipment to do that. I mean, you can literally run in place or do some step ups and things. There's stuff that you can do physically with your body weight and don't need the fancy gym to do that kind of stuff. So it's really important to make sure you get that information. And I think worth knowing about the 12-minute workout and actually knowing how to do it. Even if you have other types of workouts that you regularly like to do, you should add a 12-minute surge to your routine at least 3 days a week if you're getting that growth hormone surge. Okay, questions about that? So core chiropractic, we're going to cover this a little bit when we're talking about the nervous system controlling everything. So the one important thing I want you to hear about this is, now you guys already know the nervous system controls everything, and that's of course why you're here. Sometimes we don't really realize or kind of forget what are some of the amazing things that happen inside your body right when you have just one chiropractic adjustment. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about interleukin 2. Anybody besides you two heard of interleukin 2 before? No? New word for you? Okay, so interleukin 2 is actually an injection that they give cancer patients. And that injection costs about $1,000 per injection. And they give it to cancer patients because what they found was that interleukin 2 kills cancer. And so it's this big, fancy, expensive drug. And guess where they made that from? Copying the body, right? As a matter of fact, every single drug that's ever been created has been something that's been created out of copying what the body does and then making an artificial form of that. Well, guess what? The artificial form of that doesn't work half as well as the one, and you as what God naturally made you do. So every time you get one chiropractic adjustment, your interleukin 2 levels go up. So much so that they measured before and after blood samples of patients after having an adjustment and know that your immune system goes up by 200% on one adjustment. Right? So the first thing you want to do is get adjustment, right? And when we have somebody who's fighting cancer, we want to stimulate that as much as we possibly can, right? And that's not a go get adjusted once a month kind of thing. And sometimes people think that really maintaining your nervous system is just about having an adjustment once a month, and it's really not what that's all about. First of all, the equipment that you guys use at home, you should be using on a regular basis, even if you're on wellness care. We've recommended you do your exercises at home minimally 3 times a week and more like 5. If you're on active corrective care, like in the office or on your active corrective care, you should be doing your exercises 14 times a week. Twice a day, every day, 7 days a week for 90 days. Right? And when you do that, you get stable faster, your body changes faster, then you can go into the wellness mode where you're doing your exercises 3 to 5 times a week. Right? But you need to continue to do that. And I remind myself to do it because guess what? I'm just like you guys. It's really easy once you get in that level of, okay, I'm fine now. And then you kind of go, well, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. What I started to notice for myself is that I started to have more time, like I'm getting here really early in the morning, so I have to take my son to work. He goes to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't start here till 8:30. So I am getting here and like doing paperwork, and I'm finding myself sitting at my desk doing all this paperwork, and then at 8:30, it's time for me to go start adjusting. I feel terrible because I can't even I'm like, oh God, I'm like all stiff, and it's just awful. So I've been coming here and doing right here like you guys do. Like do my traction, I put my weights on, and go stand on vibration. And I know some of you guys are newer into the office, maybe haven't stood on vibration, but we've opened vibration back up for you guys. That you can actually do that after an adjustment, and there's tons of benefit of stimulating your nervous system by standing on vibration with your hat on. So some of you have not done that before, make sure you ask somebody next time you get adjusted, will help you learn how to do that.
A lot of ads on TV, I'm sorry. About different types of vibrations.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
There's a lot of science behind neurostimulation, and it's actually some of the topic of our next 2 week class. Is we're going to be talking a little bit about how your brain actually can grow. Right? And we think that we can't, but it does. I want to talk a bit about quality of life in comparisons with people with chronic disease and people with adult spinal deformity. So if you have abnormal curvature, meaning your neck is straightened out, or you have a scoliosis or a curvature, they did research and found out that there's 76% of less quality of life in people who have spinal disorders than in people with chronic diseases. And chronic diseases are the diabetes, the high blood pressure, the inflammatory conditions like fibromyalgia, those chronic illnesses that people with spinal compression or spinal problems are actually bigger incidents of quality of life out of that, right? So your spine and your nervous system is the most important thing you can take care of. And that affects everything else that your body does. How do I keep pushing this? I unplugged it. Why do I do that? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about supplemental support with in relationship to immune system function and cancer. So everybody's heard of curcumin before, which is made from turmeric. You want to have a medicinal strength of that, and it is known to help eliminate cancer cells without harming or damaging healthy cells. Sounds like the perfect cure for cancer, doesn't it? Something that actually knows how to kill unhealthy cells in your body and keep the healthy ones alive, right? So it's something we should be using, and it's a very natural source. Of course, you could add this to your food and eat it naturally, but a medicinal strength of it is one that actually works. You'd have to eat a lot of turmeric to make it especially or something, I don't know. But that should be supplemented. And then wait, don't look at that. That is not something we need. Go away. The diindolylmethane is actually what your body creates when it digests a cruciferous vegetable, and then that becomes a thing that fights cancer in your body. So it's not just the broccoli that fights cancer, it's actually how your body digests and breaks down that food, and then that byproduct of it is diindolylmethane. So guess what? We figured out how to put it in pill. So if you're not a cruciferous enjoyer, or your body can't digest Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, I know a lot of people sometimes have a lot of gas and trouble with broccoli and that kind of stuff. It is now conveniently put in a supplement. Okay? Yeah. It does matter, and it's actually healthier to have it pickled, and you're getting just a slide or two ahead. I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't see that slide yet, but I think we're getting to that slide. Garlic is another one that's actually great for your immune system and fighting cancer, and we have a garlic and parsley combination oil. I have not personally taken it, so I cannot speak as to whether you can garlic or anything like that. And that's something that we could certainly add to the regimen. It's part of a bundle, and everybody's heard of garlic being really good and healthy for your immune system in the first place. So here's that probiotic slide where we were talking about cabbage. So there's probiotics, and of course you can take probiotics, and it's really important that your probiotics can rotate different sources that you get that probiotic from. And what that is healthy bacteria that you need in your gut. And if the way you know that you need it in your gut is because you live in America. We can start with that. Because if you've never had an antibiotic in your entire life that you've taken orally, which I know most people in this room probably have sometime in their life, you've also been exposed to antibiotics in food. Because all the animals and all the animal products that have been commercial processed have antibiotics in it. Those antibiotics are going to your gut, and they are slowly killing your healthy gut bacteria. So we got to put it back in. We do have a supplement, and I think it's important to get it from, like I said earlier, lots of different sources. I know we all have it in our D3, but it's important to take a D3 plus a separate probiotic. Max Living does have one with 50 million, whatever, of the different strands. But we also read a little bit about how important it is to eat it when you make it like mid-heat style or pickled style. And so I looked into this a little bit myself, and I put up in this right-hand corner a thing you can get off of Amazon, which actually makes the pickling process in your kitchen really easy. Because first of all, that pickling process is expensive, And if you, I mean, to buy it, not to make it. It's very cheap to make it yourself in your house. But there's a couple of tricks to it because if you fill your jar too much and as it starts to do its fermenting and making bacteria, it actually grows and it spills all over your counter. It smells terrible. And there's also a risk of the top of the thing that you have to let breathe. You're not even you've done this before, yeah? Yeah? You make your own? So it's really not, it's not hard, right? But you just gotta know the tricks. And then there's a mold layer that can then end up forming on top of that. And then people who are good old fashioned fermenters are not afraid of that mold layer. I'm not one of those people. I'm like one of those people who go, ew, that's gross. But apparently you can just like scrape it off and move it. Well, the solution to this is these Easy Grip things because they have like a fancy lid on it that has like this burping top thing that automatically, once it gets pressure, knows how to release itself. And you can actually literally put the vegetables in, put your salt water in that, set it on the counter for 5 days, and 5 days later you have the own version of homemade pickling. And that way, if you want to put something else in it, if you want to add some different flavoring or spices and things like that, you can do that for your own mixture, to your own, liking. So yeah, so I just actually bought these and I put it up here so you guys can see what they. The brand name, it's called Easy Grip, and the brand name says BRILLENTI. And I actually researched a couple different things to see like what was the easiest and less like I'm the kind of person that would have to just do it and leave it and not have to think about it or do 6 other things to it. So I don't have that kind of patience. This is the bundle, which you guys should have in your handout for today's bundle. That bundle combination is on sale for 20% off tonight, but we also went out of our way because we really want you guys to be knowing about these 2 things because these things are probably the most important things is the curcumin and the probiotic. And these other things are certainly also important if you're not getting cruciferous vegetables, you can't digest them very well. I think this is also a very good source, and adding the garlic in is relatively inexpensive. But we also made it available where you can buy an individual bottle for 15% off. So the bundle is 20% off. The individual bottles are 15% off, and it's a special on those 4 different products. If you want to add any of those to your normal. Anybody not taking turmeric or doesn't know about taking turmeric or has questions about this one's really super important for cell health. And you need to take it.
For a while.
You haven't taken it for a while? It's really an important one. And by the way, we have a little conversation about COVID for a bit. One of the problems with COVID is the fact that when you fight off COVID, the response to your body fighting off that antigen creates inflammation. And the reason why it's a problem for people who already have diabetes or heart disease or overweight is because people who have diabetes, heart disease, or overweight are already inflamed. If you take a person who's already inflamed and you add a detrimental inflammatory response inside their body, it could push them over the edge. So guess what you need to do? Get uninflamed. Fastest way to do that, take that stuff. Right? Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
I take it all the time. And I have lots of different sources of this stuff. So I take some turmeric from this kind of turmeric, and I take sometimes this kind of turmeric, and I have a liquid one for days that I really feel like I need a big old shot of turmeric. So I order it from it's actually Apex. Anyway, it's one of the proprietors that you have to be a doctor to order from, but I can order from. Apex Energetics. And I actually have a bottle in the fridge. I just bought my portion and one for another patient, so I have an extra in the fridge. So, if anybody wants that, let me know. Great. Any other questions about these guys? Anybody? I don't. Are you sure? Oh, is it gone? All right, never mind, it's gone.
Yeah.
But we could order more. Okay, so remember I said next week we're going to be talking about strengthening your natural defense and also learning a little bit more about how the nervous system that we know through science and understanding like how the body communicates. Old fashioned, like 34 years ago when I graduated, we used to explain chiropractic by saying bone out, pinch nerve, that's bad. Right now we understand it's like so much more complex of how the nervous system works. And some of you, if you haven't been to my doctor report more recently, we talk a little bit more about that kind of science where your spinal cord goes into distress and a chemical reaction actually happens in your brain just from being subluxated. Like, so we're going to share a few more details about how that works, why you got subluxated, and what you have to do to make sure you're taking good care of yourself. So now, I passed out your food diary. I want to spend a little bit of time before we go, and then we'll go ahead and have that snack too. But I'm imagining some people might have some questions about the pages that I gave you. So what you'll notice on those pages is that there's a lot of food there, yeah? You notice that? Mm-hmm. Like, so breakfast, lunch, dinner. So one of the problems that we have with storing fat and not losing weight is that we don't eat often enough. So there's something to be said about intermittent fasting, but it's not supposed to be happening every single day. Right? That's more like a cleansing detox thing to do. If you do it too much, especially us females, we get stuck and start storing fat when we do that. Right? Guys don't have that. So, right? So that's why it's really important to make sure you're eating enough. Now, you don't need 3 snacks a day, but I have them on there in case you're like, desperate or hungry. And then the other thing to know is you can also change, if there's a breakfast on there or somebody goes like, I stand grapefruit. Good, don't eat grapefruit, pick a different fruit, right? That's one of our protein shakes. She asked what's Pure Path protein. I don't think I can hear that. That is one of our protein shakes. We actually have 3 different protein shakes here in the office that we can utilize, and you can substitute any one of them. So, but be very careful when you get a protein shake that we make sure if it's not one that's in our office, you gotta make sure it's grass-fed, organic, no antibiotics or hormones are in that way, and then it's sweetened with stevia. Right? So, is there too much there that you can't ask a question, or it's so easy I made it too simple and you don't have it?
This is really nice.
Very easy, too easy.
No,
Perfectly easy.
Really nice. No, it's good.
It is, but I'll tell you what. Let me just tell you this. Myers has organic food. So you don't have to go to a specialty store to find organic food. I hit Whole Foods sometimes and I have some things I can't find somewhere else. Like my organic decaf coffee beans. I can't find it anywhere else. For some stupid reason, Better Health doesn't even carry decaf coffee beans. Yeah, really weird. But so sometimes I'll have places I'll go to something like that on a special occasion. But Kroger carries a nice display of organic stuff, especially the newer Kroger you go to, the more you're going to have organic stuff. And then Myers has lots of organic stuff. And the harder part about Myers, of course, is like anything else, it's like you got to do a lot of this before you find it, right? Aldi's is carrying organic stuff. And Costco is just really good. BJ's is also really good too. And newer BJ's is up the road over there. It's closer to our house and we get that. So that's good. Good question. The other thing I forgot to tell you is if the recipes or the food that I described on there, you don't have a recipe for, you can't find it in your book, you can go right on our website. And on the top of our page of our website, actually I should probably demonstrate that for you. You can go right to healthy recipes. And what's also really fun about this is that once you start doing that,